Hi, everyone. This is Janet Majors, and welcome to One-on-One with Harness You. We've been watching a lot about what's going on the last couple of weeks, and our company is one that wants to offer the tools and support that we all need to get through this time. And in order to do that, I thought I'd wrangle a few of my favorite people that really work at the intersection of tech and community and, oh gosh, all kinds of things, and just have them offer their wisdom with us, because it's all about sharing it with one another and seeing what we can do to help each other through this tumultuous time. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Robert MacPhee. And let me tell you, folks, this guy gets it better than anybody I know. And I'm not even going to try to read this by memory because it's too long for my old brain, but I am going to read this off of a screen. You founded Excellent Decision 21 years ago. You're a founding member of the Transformation Leadership Council and Southern California Association of Transformational Leaders. You also worked at Jack Canfield as the Director of Training. And not only that, you're an author of Manifesting for Non-Gurus. Then to make him really get sainthood, he coached me last year when I launched, Harness You. So let me tell you, this guy has already reserved his place in heaven. Trust me when I say that. So welcome aboard, Robert.
It wasn't.
No pressure for performance there.
Janet makes it sound like torture, but anybody who knows Janet know that it wasn't torture. It's super fun.
I don't know about that one.
She pushed the limits a little bit, but no.
Yes. I have been known to do that once or twice.
All very
anyway,
worthwhile.
Robert has this amazing course that he teaches in values-based decision-making, and it sits at the core of our training at Harness You. So I wanted everybody to get to know really what resides in Robert's mind to have him come up with this amazing thing. So, Robert, what was your reason for starting Excellent Decisions?
Well, it's pretty interesting in the context of what you and I have been working together on. The true start of the branding of Excellent Decisions started with a program for young people. And it was really driven by the fact, I was working with colleges and universities at the time, and it was driven by the fact that our young people are faced with so much stress and pressure. Mm-hmm. And what I realized was my own children, who at the time were about that age, I think my oldest was in college, my youngest was still in high school, but they were right in that age group. And what I like, you mentioned, I used to work with Jack Canfield, who's the co-creator of the Chicken Soup for the Soul book series. And the truth is, my kids grew up while I was working with people like Jack. And I call that my unfair advantage. Like as a parent, that's really unfair. Most young people don't grow up with parents who have the opportunity to hang out in that kind of environment. So
you'd be right there.
Yeah. And what I realized was not that my children and therefore, didn't have any stress and pressure, because the truth is the stress and pressure of, academic pressure and social pressure and peer pressure and, parental pressure in a lot of cases is just huge. But they knew how to handle it, and they knew how to make decisions. Now, this is how I define excellent decisions. They knew how to make decisions based on vision and values and their own value, rather than all that stress and pressure. And what I saw was that they were able to go out into the world, and in the academic environment, and now that they're out in the professional environment, they're able to live their lives in a way where they're happy, they're productive, they're good citizens, they're on track. They're living their lives the way they would want to live them. And as a father, I couldn't be happier. And that's ultimately, they're all different, but they're all living their lives in alignment with what's really important to them. Mm-hmm. And again, that's how the whole idea of excellent decisions, making decisions based on vision and values and value rather than stress and pressure, really emerged as kind of a branding around the work that I do.
Well, and when I first met you about 1.5 years ago, we were talking about this, and I was just launching Harness You, and I remember saying, we have to address this rising skills gap. And I remember so clearly, we were getting a glass of wine before a meeting, and And you just beamed when I said that. So I knew I had hit something, but
Yeah, it's right in my wheelhouse because and it's
yes.
great. It's the amount of skills training that's available to our young people today in whatever field they want to go into is incredible, and the easy access through online training and online education and all those kinds of things. It's awesome. I love it. There's so much opportunity, and yet we still see so many people of all ages who end up on a path that someone else is dictating for them. Their parents
Yes.
or their coworkers or their friends or their boss or whatever is dictating the path that they're heading down, rather than having them make decisions and make choices based on what's really important to them. And I think this is why, what you said really got my attention, is because we saw the same gap,
Mm-hmm.
and we have the same desire for people of all ages, really, but especially young people, to just be aware that that's an opportunity for them, to be
Mm-hmm.
asking young people these questions. What is your vision? What are your values? What
And
is
what
the
is your
value
goal?
that you bring? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And in a lot of cases, getting a look like, wow, no one ever asked me that before. Or in some cases, because of the ways that I've been able to learn to ask some of those questions, even if they've been asked questions like that, they haven't been asked in the way that I ask them, in at the level of depth. Like, because sometimes, they have a great answer, for the cocktail party, like, oh, well, I'm working for Facebook and I'm a developer of whatever I'm a developer of, and it sounds, professor impressive. And I'll say something like, oh, really? Well, why do you do that? Like, why did you pick that? Does that bring you joy? And they look at me like I'm a nutcase. But that's what I want for them is
Yeah.
is this experience. I talk in my work about the ancient Greek definition of happiness, which is the experience of joy while in pursuit of your potential. And that's what I want, like, for myself, for my children, for all the people that I work with. I want, yeah, let's have fun. Let's make it a joyful experience, but let's be on track with our own potential. And your potential is different than my potential. I have 3 kids. They all grew up in the same house. My wife and I feel like we treated them the same way, and they're all different. They're on very different trajectories, doing very different things. But I can honestly say that they're each one in pursuit of their own potential, which is exactly what I want for them.
And as a parent, that must make you feel very, very proud.
Oh, it does not get any better than that. And it's funny when other people meet my children, especially if they have younger children, they're usually full of a lot of questions for me because uh, if you're a parent, you probably want the same kind of experience that I'm having, and you
Yes.
want for your children the same kind of experience that my children are having rather. And I mean, as we're recording this in the midst of the coronavirus crisis and all this fun stuff that's going on, not to say that everything's always perfect and everyone's all rainbows and unicorns every day. It's not always like that. But
Well,
when we're
rainbows and unicorns right now, that's for sure.
yeah, it's true. I mean, we're talking about, decisions made based on vision and values and value instead of stress and pressure. Well, stress and pressure right now, oh my gosh, the volume's turned way up. And to me, like, you and I have been jumping through hoops to get this video session together, and I don't care, because there has never been a more important time to be in this conversation. There has never been a more important time for people to have clarity about their vision and their values and their value, what's really important to them, because the stress and pressure is just crazy. Like, I feel like my job for the last 2 weeks has been to help people calm down, because
I think it has been your job.
is this
I know
fire
you've calmed
hose.
me down.
Well, there's this fire hose of information, and I mean, I experienced it myself, being invited into panic, right? There's this scarcity and this fear and this panic that is present, and there's an invitation into it. And I'm a huge believer in the importance of being aware and paying attention and knowing what's going on around you, but I'm also a huge believer in the fact that panic doesn't help. If you let it go to the degree of panic, then you're losing your ability to make good decisions, to take the right actions, to move yourself in the direction that you want to go, even if it is super crazy out there. Let's stay, like, clear and present and focused, and again, make decisions and take actions in alignment with what's most important to us. And that puts us in a position to be able to support other people as well, which I know is a passion that you share. It's why you started this organization to begin with.
Well, one of the things that I found so compelling, was going back to school and really getting back in touch with students at 58 and realized that there was this real gap going on. And I have been mentoring a lot of younger professional women, and I just see this level of anxiety that I'm living what my parents told me to be, but I'm not happy.
Hmm.
And so, why is it so important, do you think, for young adults to be learning this now and in
Well, I
this
think in,
time?
yeah, I think in some ways you just described exactly why it's so important, is because we do have people who they think they're doing all the right things. They're checking all the right boxes. They're following the path that they've been told is the path to happiness, right? And first of all, most people, when I share that ancient Greek definition of happiness, the experience of joy while in pursuit of your potential, over and over again, I see people like grabbing a pen and a piece of paper. They want to write that down,
Right.
because in our world, so often happiness is defined as, that rainbows and unicorns thing. Oh, I'm bankrupt, but I'm still smiling. Or, oh, I'm 100 pounds overweight, but I'm still smiling. My boss is a jerk, but I'm still smiling, right? And we think that's happiness. But to me, that's not happiness. It's actually the opposite of happiness, because the true emotional experience that we're having is not an experience of joy, and the results that we're creating are not in alignment with our true potential. So the importance of engaging in this conversation, and the importance of people getting clarity about their vision and their values so they can make decisions differently, and they can choose a different path if that's appropriate, or maybe a different approach to the same path. I'm not here to tell anyone what path they should be on. I'm here to ask a lot of questions about why they're on the path that they're on and whether that's the right one. If they're looking for a different one, I'd love to ask questions about, what would be the right one for them. But it's definitely not for me or for you to choose what someone else's path should be.
Mhm.
But again, the importance, and again, right now at this particular time, this literally historical time, where we don't know, like in 2 weeks or 2 months, like the world is going to be different. And if we don't have clarity about like who we are and what's important to us, what our values are, and I think a lot of our visions are going to be changing, right? Like, the values
Some
is
of our
really what's
values will
important to
be.
us. Our vision is looking ahead and having a clear picture of where we want to be and what that looks like and feels like, what kind of experience. If my goal is to double my income, my vision is about how does that change my life? It's great to double your income. I love doubling income. But what does that mean? Like, where am I? How does that change my relationships? What am I able to do that I'm not able to do? That's the vision part. And I feel like I'm going to be changing my vision in the coming weeks and months, because the world as we know it is changing. And I'm thrilled that I have the tools, and I've done a lot of the work to get clear about my values and what's really important to me, and the value that I bring to the marketplace and to the other people in my community, so I can craft that vision in a way that will be in alignment with my values and what's important to me. So the fact that so many people are unhappy, that wake up one day thinking they're doing all the right things and realizing that they're really not happy, they're not fulfilled. We hear a lot. I do a lot of organizational work with consulting with leaders and organizations, and the word engaged is out there a lot. It's like the consulting buzzword, but I don't like that word. I like the word fulfilled, because I
I go
believe
with
that,
purpose driven.
yeah, I mean, if engaged fits in this box, then fulfilled is like a bigger box that includes engaged. If people are fulfilled, they're also engaged. But if they're engaged, that doesn't necessarily mean they're fulfilled. And if I'm running a company, or if I'm working for a company, what I want is fulfilled. I want people to feel like they're, again, in that position of being on purpose. And purpose in my world, people look at my definition of excellent decisions and say, where is purpose? You talk about vision and values and value, where is purpose? I say, if you have a clear vision and it's in alignment with your values, you're on purpose. And again, that's what I want for people, to do the work, to get clear about your values, to create a compelling vision. Go back and check, make sure it's in alignment with your values. If it is, let's go. That's the path.
It's interesting. It sounds really, easy as we're talking about it, but I think we both know there's a bit of a journey involved in that. And I know lately we've been talking a lot when we're out and about, company wide, and saying that, it's okay to take a pause. It's okay to step off that rat race, and take a pause and reflect. And, whether we want it or not, a pause has been given to us. And in a very odd way, I
Yeah.
almost kind of view this time as a silver lining because it is allowing people to pause, and it is allowing people to go, okay, what do I want to take out of this? Do I want to keep recreating the things that I've been doing, or can I actually look at it in a different way? And the thing that I found in my own journey is when I owned that value and vision, it's like it took it went into the core of who I am.
Hmm.
And when you own it in the core of who you are as a being, there's something that radically shifts. At least it did for me. It it made me feel strong. It made me feel confident. And once I aligned my values with what I wanted, with my purpose, man, it was like I was giving out pheromones to people because everybody's like, how I want to be like you. Well, you can be like you yourself rather than be like me. But it was amazing how powerful that sense of ownership is to a person, especially when they're interviewing. And how can how can you recommend, or what can you recommend to help in the building of that narrative for people? I
Well,
know
first
that's
of all,
a
you
big
said
question.
something. Well, first of all, you said something about, it sounds so easy. Here we are, we're on a video, we're, living in this chaos,
La-di-da.
and we're talking about this stuff. And on some level, it can sound easy. And there's a cliche in and around the work that I do where, it's not necessarily easy, but it's simple. And I'm a huge fan of simplicity. Like, I like to make things as simple as possible. We take excellent decisions. We deliver it by looking at awareness first. I feel like it's really important that people are aware of how change works. If they want to create some sort of change, they want something to be different in their life, it's important to know how that game is played. Like, how does
Mhm.
change work? Why do I experience resistance even when I try to change something that I know is good for me? How does that work? It's also really important for people to be aware of what it means to take 100% responsibility. If people aren't willing to take responsibility, the rest of this conversation is interesting and entertaining, but it's probably not going to really make much difference. And then I look at clarity, and you've heard me talking already about vision and values and value. Well, we have to do some work to get clear about what is your vision, what are your values, and what is your value. So that's clarity. And then the third step of what I do is in the area of what I call letting go of attachments. It's
Mhm.
looking at our current beliefs and habits and the environments we're surrounded by, and looking at how we get in our own way, like what's making it more difficult than it needs to be. And then the final step is about taking action, getting out. It's great to talk about this stuff, and meditating and doing all the inner work and all that. But at some point, we have to get into action. We have to get out in the world and express who we really are and express our value in the marketplace. And I know you have a real passion for helping people at work in their career, and,
Mhm.
and making choices and putting themselves in a position where they have a really fulfilling and really um, rewarding career, that they feel like they're on purpose and fulfilling their potential. So there's that stage of what I call inspired action, which also includes asking for help from other people and getting feedback. So it's simple, but there's a whole lot going on there. Like, each one of those four areas, with awareness and clarity and letting go of attachments and taking action, I look at them like silos. I could do a week-long workshop on any one of those four categories, and we can dive deep, and we can do exercises and activities and really get to that place that you described for yourself of saying, yeah, that's who I really am. That is what's really important to me. That is the vision that I really want to fulfill. And the energy that comes with that is totally different than anything you'll ever get by trying to do what your mom wanted you to do.
Uh,
It's a total game changer. And the other thing I want to add that I think is really important about this piece about simplicity, and it sounds easy, but it's really not. This is one of the things that makes me really, really excited about working with young people. So here's you and I on this call, right? And we have years and years of what we call wisdom, right?
Well, maybe you do. I'm still gaining some of mine.
We call it scars, we call it wisdom, we call it experience, but whatever. The truth is we have years and years of hard wiring, of
Yes.
kind of getting entrenched in doing things the way that we do them because that's the way we do them. And that's just being human, right? Living your life. And one of the reasons I love working with young people is they don't have as much of that wisdom. They don't have so many layers of having built up habits and thought patterns and beliefs that in many ways could be getting in their way and preventing them from getting them to that place that you described so beautifully. Like when I really realized, like when I got that increased clarity of who I really am and what's really important to me, it's energizing, it's empowering in ways again, it's harder with older people to get to that place. And like it's like making a statue or something. You're starting with a much bigger piece of granite. You're trying to get all the way into the middle. Younger
Yeah, I think I
people.
have a few carve marks around
Yeah,
me.
there you go. Me too.
Um,
And I know you're really passionate about working with young people too. And I would
yes.
suspect it's for similar reasons. Like the light goes on and they go, oh yeah, it's like working with entrepreneurs instead of big corporations. You have a great idea in a big corporation, they take 6 months and they do a proposal and they submit it to the committee and they do a budget and 2 years later they're talking about maybe doing something. Then you work with entrepreneurs and like, oh, that's a great idea, let's start tomorrow. And young people are like entrepreneurs. The light goes on and they could just go. And so I love, love, love working with young people.
Well, speaking of turning the light on and letting them go, one of the things that prompted me to do this series was, again, to reach out to people like yourself and have you share some tools. So what are some tools that that we could share with our audience that could really help people get through right now? Because this is a classic time, so why not use the time to reflect a little if you can.
Yeah. Well, a couple things come to mind. First of all, I touched a little bit on the idea of personal responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned I had the great privilege, really, of working closely with Jack Canfield, who is mostly well known as the co-creator of the Chicken Soup for the Soul book series. But he also wrote a book called The Success Principles, which is an amazing book. It's 64 principles that emerged out of years and years of studies of what successful people do differently than people who struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And the number one principle in that book is about taking 100% responsibility for the results and the experiences that we have in our life. And we are living in a time right now, actually, I'll tell you how Jack explained it. He explained it with a formula, and the formula was E plus R equals O. And the E stands for events. So we all have events in our life: the weather, the traffic, our boss, our coworkers, our family. These are all events, right? And the truth is, we're living in a time right now where there's like a really big event going on, right? Literally,
Yeah.
a life-changing, and no hyperbole, there is a historic caliber event going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And if we look around, we are surrounded by people who are letting the event dictate everything, right? And what Jack teaches is the event plus our response to that event is what ultimately determines the outcomes. So the results that we get, the experiences that we have, doesn't necessarily, it's partially dictated by the event, but the point of power, the thing that we can control, is how we respond. And you can also look around right now and you can see that different people are responding in very different ways. I told you for the last 2 weeks, I feel like my job has been getting people to calm down.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm lucky. I know I am so blessed. I've spent the last 20 plus years hanging around with people like Jack Canfield, being a member of the Transformational Leadership Council, the Southern California Association of Transformational Leaders, which all, it sounds really fancy, right? But the truth is I'm surrounded by people who are open-minded, lifelong learners, always looking for ways to improve and get better and learn more and accomplish more and just be better people, make a bigger contribution. I'm hanging around with those kinds of people. So when something like this happens, I feel like I'm better prepared. Better is probably not a great word, but I'm prepared differently than people who have been, nose to the grindstone, working, trying to support their family, just, trying to get through day to day, week to week, month to month. So I can respond differently than they would normally respond because I have different tools in my tool chest, if you will. So that whole idea of being willing to take responsibility and to understand what that means, that we do, even with this crazy virus. And I mean, people are dying. And we know people who are sick, and the economy is shut down, and we're stuck at home. This is a serious event. This is a big, big, big event. But we shouldn't forget that we have a choice about how to respond to what's going on. We can choose to go into panic. We can choose to look for ways to support other people. We can choose to be in fear, or we can choose to look for the opportunities and look to be creative about how we can find some good, or again, some way to support people. I mean, I'm in a little bit of a panic about work stuff, because a lot of the work that I do, I told you I work with organizations. I'm not doing any of that work right now. How long? I don't know. That's not a great thing for me. But
Yeah,
the truth is, I can,
I'm sorry.
yeah, I can dive into panic about that, or I can look at the work I do and say, and this is the value piece, right? So I have a vision, I have values, and I have value. And part of the value that I'm normally expressing is the work I do with organizations. Well, that ain't happening right now. So rather than get all upset about that and panic and worry about when it's going to come back, I'm looking around. I'm kind of like the radar guy right now, saying, where else can I be valuable? How can I be valuable online instead of in person? How can I be valuable working with an individual instead of an organization? And the truth is, there's all sorts of ways that I can. So that's the way I'm choosing to respond. So in terms of your question about tools, I think one of the big ones would be to really embrace personal responsibility and look for the choices that you could make about how to respond, rather than getting all caught up in the event. And then the second thing I would say, and I probably sound like a broken record, but there's some very simple questions we can ask ourselves about our vision, and about our values, and about our value. And vision is really a question, and this is, I think, the hardest one right now, because as we look ahead, having a vision is looking ahead in time. And the truth is, there's a lot of uncertainty as we look ahead. But we can still ask those questions. Even if we don't have all the answers, we can explore the possibilities and be looking ahead and say, what's my vision? Coming out of this event, what do I want to see happening? And start to get some idea of what that looks like. That would be vision. The best values question that I'm aware of is really simple. It's just, what is important to you? Ask yourself, what is important to you? And then in terms of your value, especially for people working on career goals or financial goals, it's really important to get clear about our value. Even in relationships, it's important, if we want things to be different, if we want to grow and expand, what's our value? What are we willing to give in return and able to give in return? And the question around value is, most of the time, at its simplest, it's just asking ourselves, what is my value? Or where am I most valuable? So those are a couple of tools that people can use to kind of align the compass, if you will.
So specific to our circumstances now, take responsibility in terms of being mindful of, if it says shelter in place, stay in place, even though, it's hard and it requires a sacrifice. And then maybe use this time to really think about where you can add value. I know that was the first thing that Harness You did, because we were in the midst of wanting to launch our 5-day immersive program when this hit. And we said, okay, that's gone. Nobody's coming. What value can we provide? And because the ethos of our company is providing value in a rapidly changing world, if we can't do it here, we failed. We've just utterly failed. So we stopped all self-promotion and just offered tools and support mechanisms and what have you. So, whether we come out of it intact or not, at least we know we've been following our values and we feel good about what we're offering. And I just wanted to say thank you for offering these tools and your insight. And, This is why you're my coach. You totally get it.
And I want to comment. I want to comment really quickly on what you said about the shelter-in-place thing, because I think it's a really good example of what we're talking about. If we were in a room full of people, I would say, how many of you are really excited about sheltering in place? And probably not a single hand would go up. Maybe a few. Maybe a few people don't like their office dynamic. They like sheltering in place. But the truth is, this is a pretty major inconvenience for a lot of people. So it's not necessarily something that we want to do. But if we really got into the conversation with the people in that room, and we had them do some work around their values and what's really important, we had them get with a partner and talk about what's really important to you and tap into your most important values. And then we came back and we said, so how many of you would agree that it's important right now for all of us to stay home, to prevent the spread of this virus? Everyone would agree, right? Because it's totally in alignment with our values. But the people who are out on the beach in Florida and the people who are just, choosing to ignore what's going on are people, in my opinion, who have never done any work like that. They've never really looked at what's really important to them, and they're responding and they're acting in alignment with the external and the internal stress and pressure that, they're just doing what they want to do because that's what they want to do. It's not driven by any sense of higher purpose or connection to their real values.
Yeah.
And I mean, I came back from a trip to San Diego when this was all first breaking loose, and
You
my mom's,
drove rather than fly. I
well,
remember.
yeah, well, that honestly wasn't the reason why, um, but my mom's in her 80s and she lives about a half an hour from where I live. And when I got back from being at 2 conferences, I realized there was a very good possibility that I had this virus, and there was no way. I mean, I love going to visit my mom. That's what I want to do. If I'm just doing what I want to do without really thinking about it, I'm gonna go visit my mom. But that would be a really bad choice. That would not be an excellent decision. What's in alignment with what's really important to me is, for the past 2 weeks since I've been home, I haven't seen my mom. I taught her how to use Zoom yesterday. That was an adventure. Um, but that's the difference between just being driven by what you want to do or what everybody else wants you to do, and having decisions. Like if everyone in this country was really clear about their vision and their values and what's really important to them, they'd all be staying home. Because I think we can agree, like when you really get to people's values, we care about each other. We want to help each other. We had the fires in Northern California. People come out, they want to help each other.
Yeah.
This is what's happening now with this virus. People want to help each other. That's our real values on a deeper level. So when you shared that about the kind of the shelter in place, I think it really is a perfect example of what we're talking about.
Well, I just want to say thank you for sharing your value and your vision and what's important to you and how we can apply it to our lives as well. And just again, wanted to say thank you for giving us time during all of this. And
You're
yep, that's about
welcome.
it.
And I'm looking forward to continuing to work with Harness You, to get these kind of messages, get these conversations out there, go into real depth on them, to go really deep into this, so people don't just scratch the surface, but really get it on a deep level, have the experience you described of just being energized and excited by having that sense of clarity that we're talking about.
I think that will help. And again, thank you so much.
All right, I'll
Have
shut
a
up now.
great day. Bye.